And we are live. Thank you for tuning in to the Max Van Auken podcast. Yes, this is available on YouTube. If you're watching it, please download, rate, and subscribe. Well, if you're on YouTube right now, you're watching this video, hit that subscribe button for me, please. And if you're listening via podcast, please download, rate, and subscribe. It's available on any podcast platform, wherever you get podcasts. A lot of people go on iHeartRadio now, Spotify, Stitcher Radio. It's on Apple Music, wherever you get podcasts. This is available. I'm not doing a special interview today. It's just me ranting. If you're a loyal listener to the podcast, every once in a while I'll have these episodes, unique theories, ideas, or just kind of talk about what's been going around in the league. And because of free agency, signings, the trading deadline, there's just been so much going on. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just take this episode, talk about everything that's going on, the landscape of the NBA. Roy Williams also retired today. So it's a lot going on. So I want to break down the game. We'll go East and West. So let's start off with the East. The Brooklyn Nets, right? I've called them, when I interviewed Chris Broussard, you can check it out, I called them Mike Tyson. I've referred to a couple of different teams as different boxers. The Milwaukee Bucks is George Foreman, where you know what you're getting with that left hook with Giannis. But other than that, there's not really a lot of layers to that team. But that left hook is deadly. You can't get hit by it. Giannis. And I've called the Brooklyn Nets Mike Tyson, where you cannot stand toe-to-toe with them. You're not going to outscore the Brooklyn Nets, right? You're just flat out not going to. Some things don't outthink the room. It's not rocket science. The Brooklyn Nets are just stacked. Let's just call it spade a spade. They are stacked. James Harden's playing like an MVP. And honestly, with LeBron out, Joel Embiid just returning, you can make the case he should get the MVP because Kevin Durant's missed a lot of the season. The big three have only played like 7 games with each other. And what he's been able to do, I think they're like a second seed in the East. Ridiculous. And his numbers are ridiculous. And he's playing like a point guard. So availability to me is the most underrated ability. It's the best ability. You have to be available. And he's always available night in, night out. Say what you want about the step back. Say what you want about the foul calls. He always comes to play. And that's one thing I'll always tip my hat off to James Harden. So they're stacked. But they get Blake Griffin. They get LaMarcus Aldridge. And I'm hearing a lot of outrage. It's not fair. Here is what it is. They are stacked. They're not really worried about stopping you. They know they're going to outscore you. And they certainly will. That's just what it is. Especially in the East, there's not really a lot of teams that are going to be able to put up with that firepower. But adding LaMarcus Aldridge, he's a little bit of an interior defender, a little bit. But that's not what he's known for. He'll hit the mid-range jumper. I've compared it to a more productive David West when he's in Golden State. Right in Indiana, he's a bucket. Golden State, not asked to do much. But when he does, it's like, oh, wow, you feel his contribution. I think he'll be better than David West was because LaMarcus can still give you 15 to 20 points. But adding Blake Griffin, obviously he's a little bit more motivated, right? You're seeing more dunks now. Doesn't add to the what is their issue? Let's talk about their issue. Defense and depth. They didn't need more scoring. Blake Griffin doesn't add to the defensive need. LaMarcus Aldridge really doesn't add to the defensive need, but he can definitely help lineups if they want to go small, they want to go big, he can stretch the floor. But they didn't really fill a need. And that shows me that, yeah, they just know they're going to outscore you. So they're Mike Tyson. Like I've said, you cannot stand toe-to-toe with them. They're more than just the left hook. You got the footwork, you got the head movement, you got the speed, you got the ferocity. They're just flat-out ballers. My biggest concern with the Brooklyn Nets is availability, because Kevin Durant has proven to be injury-prone, and Kyrie Irving has proven to be injury-prone, and chemistry. And the biggest example I could use is the Clippers, right? Everyone thought they were going to win the championship. I said the Lakers, but it's the bet that I had with Rob Parker, and I said Lakers are going to win. And I was like, you're a LeBron guy, you're a Laker guy. And it's like, no, I'm just calling it from what I see. They've only played 7 games with each other. And sure, it looks great in the postseason. They're in the honeymoon phase. Everyone's happy. Everyone's getting a bucket. Everyone's getting their touches. But when you hit adversity, what's going to happen? Who's the voice in the locker room? Who's the leader in the locker room? I think Kevin Durant's the second best player in the world. I think he's arguably the most talented player in the world. I don't think he's the best leader. You see these issues on social media. I just don't think he is the guy to lead as the voice in the locker room. He has number one talent by far. I just don't always think he's the best leader. And then you say, oh, well, he won in Golden State. Steph Curry was in the locker room. Draymond Green was in the locker room. The culture was already established with Steve Kerr and Klay Thompson. So I don't use that as an example. Again, not questioning his talent, I'm questioning his leadership. Kyrie Irving. I'm not going to sit here and say he's crazy, but I don't necessarily think he's the guy who should lead your team in the locker room. And James Harden. I don't think he's really proven to lead his team in the locker room. Now, these are all number one talents. Again, not questioning talent. There's a difference. But when adversity hits, look at the Clippers when they blew the 3-1 lead against the Nuggets in the bubble last year. They didn't blow that lead because of lack of talent. That's how they got up 3-1. But when adversity hit, they didn't have that chemistry and that leadership and that camaraderie. And typically you can afford, like if this was your second year together, hey, AD, miss some games, rest. LeBron, AD, miss some games, rest, because they have that chemistry. But this is their first year together. So as talented as they are, and now this is different than the Clippers because they are more talented than the Clippers. I do think if you are a Brooklyn Nets fan, there's two things that you're concerned about, and it's chemistry and its availability. When they do play together, it looks like it works. But like I said, this is the honeymoon phase. I want to see it in the postseason. What's going to happen when they're down? What happens when they lose and you get asked those tough questions or you blame a loss on somebody? I think they'll get to the finals off pure talent. I still have the Lakers repeating, but I do have the Nets and I do have the Lakers. I have the Lakers repeating. And now let's shift. Let's stick in the East. Miami and Philadelphia, I think, are the two teams that will give Brooklyn their biggest problems. I don't necessarily think they're going to beat them, but if I'm Brooklyn, these are the two teams I'd look out for. It's not Milwaukee. It's not a Toronto. It's a Philly, and it's a Miami. Pat Riley is one of the best basketball minds in the business. Aggressive wins. He does good business. He gets Victor Oladipo. What does that do? It adds another two-way player to their depth, to their roster. I have Jimmy Butler. That dog mentality, a two-way player who can play defense and give you a bucket. Jimmy Buckets. I have Bam Adebayo, one of the youngest, most promising young players in the league, versatility, two-way player. And now I have Victor Oladipo, who fits right into that culture, two-way player. He won't be asked to do too much. I always say expectations are everything. They're not expecting Victor Oladipo to put the team on his back like in Indiana and be that guy. They don't need him to do that. We need you to play good defense and be a consistent bucket. And that's exactly what he will be. So when you look at how they match up with Brooklyn, do they have the star power? Compared to Brooklyn, no. Nobody really does. But they can match up with them, and they can give them some issues, right? You could put like, hey, Victor, we need you on Kyrie. I'm not saying he's going to lock Kyrie up, but certainly it may agitate him a little bit. It may slow him down a little bit. Hey, Jimmy Butler, we need you on James Harden. Hey, Bam, we need you on KD. They can match up. They have the shooting with the Duncan Robinson, with the Tyler Hero. They're well-coached, well-oiled machine, the culture. Again, not saying they're going to beat Brooklyn, but Miami is a threat to Brooklyn, and Brooklyn needs to watch out for Miami. I think they can surprise a lot of people. But then you look at Philly, where you have that star power in Joel Embiid, who nobody in the NBA can guard Joel Embiid on the block. Doc Rivers said it on a podcast, Colin Coward's podcast. He was like, we have the most consistent 2 points in the game. You get Joel Embiid in the bucket, in the paint, it's a bucket. It's guaranteed. His frame, his size, his footwork, his touch around the rim, it's like almost like a Zion. Get to a certain spot, you're not stopping him. When the game is such a shooting-oriented league now, you can either shoot yourself out of the game or you can shoot yourself into a game. But when you need a bucket, it's important to have that consistent bucket. What Embiid brings that consistency. We need a bucket, and that affects the whole momentum of a game. Now everyone's crashing on him. You have Danny Green, you have Seth Curry now. I like what they've done. And I also, of course, you have the Ben Simmons. Philly can provide a lot of different issues for Brooklyn. Like I said, the size, the length, the shooting, and yet they do have the star power. You have Simmons, you have Embiid. Tobias Harris is playing great basketball. He always does under Doc Rivers. Philly and Miami are the biggest threats to Brooklyn. And if I'm Brooklyn, those are the teams I have my eye on. Doesn't mean don't look past anybody, but those are your biggest threats in the East. And then I want to go to my very own Orlando Magic. So I cover the Orlando Magic. I live in Daytona Beach, commute there. This was pre-bubble, pre-pandemic, and it was easy to just an hour, commute there, interview the players. Did it for like 2 seasons. So one of the things I would always notice, and I meet my guy Rashad Phillips there, was the identity. I'm like, okay, you have talent, right? You have Vucevic, who's your all-star. But yet you have Aaron Gordon, who's putting the butts in the seats, right? Arguably one of the greatest dunk contests of all time, featuring Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine. They didn't know who to go to. Then you have the young talent in Jonathan Isaac, who's your most versatile two-way player. They didn't really go to him that much. But then you have Markelle Fultz, who I was high on because the expectations were so low. I knew he was going to shock a lot of people. And then you draft Cole Anthony. They didn't have a direction. Now, getting rid of Aaron Gordon, you get RJ Hampton, who I think will thrive in Orlando. I've always been high on RJ Hampton, the speed of the game, the spacing of the game. But you get rid of Aaron Gordon, which made Denver better. We'll get into that. And you get rid of Vucevic to the Bulls. Chicago got better. But you didn't really get a lot in return for Vucevic. You could have gotten way more for your all-star than just a couple players. Like, you could have gotten more. But what I will say, because I'm a glass half full guy, if you're an Orlando Magic fan, you have to be happy because the worst place you want to be is just the middle of the pack consistently, because it doesn't really give you a good pick. You're not really a free agent destination, but yet you're not terrible, where when you're terrible, at least you have, okay, this is what the plan is. We're going to tank. Well, I'm not a big fan of tanking. I believe in building a culture. But it's all about choosing a direction and going that way. You don't want to be half in and half out, middle of the pack. Choose a direction, go that way. If it requires some rough years, it requires some rough years. Have a vision, pursue that vision. And I think it's important that you play hard and build a culture. Miami did this in the NFL. The Knicks are doing it right now. Build a culture. You can have all the talent in the world. If you don't have a culture, it doesn't matter. It's not going to attract more people. Look at Minnesota. You've had Karl Anthony Towns, Kevin Love, Kevin Garnett. Now you have had Zach LaVine, Andrew Wiggins, Jimmy Butler. It doesn't do anything because you don't have a culture. You don't have an identity. You don't have a direction. So if the Orlando chooses to actually follow through with this, you have Markelle Fultz, you have Cole Anthony, you have RJ Hampton. That's a dynamic backcourt. Let's see how these interchangeable parts can play with each other in the open floor, which I think they can. Now, if you get a top 5 pick, of course you want the Cade Cunningham, who I absolutely love, or you want like a Suggs. You want that piece. And then now it's like, oh, okay, we got a young dynamic backcourt. We have a Cade. And then it's like we're getting Mo Bamba back, who will get more touches because Vooch is out. Okay, we're getting a healthy Jonathan Isaac. Now you actually have a direction. So if you're an Orlando Magic fan, I think you're happy because you have a direction, but you're probably a little disappointed in what you got in return. So as far as the East, it's Brooklyn head and shoulders above everyone else, in my opinion. Then you got the Miamis and the Philly, and then it's the rest. You got the Torontos. Obviously, what the Hornets have done this season has been spectacular compared to what we were expecting. Very high on LaMelo, the Bluetooth quality, but it looks like he's out for the rest of the season, or probably out for the rest of the season. If you're Atlanta, you have to be happy with the way the new coaching transition and how they've been playing with the new coach. I'm a big Trae Young guy. I think the Hawks are the team of the future. But as far as the East right now this season, I don't think it's rocket science. I think it's all about a game. The basketball is a game of runs and matchups. Brooklyn, Miami, Philly, and Brooklyn number 1. Now that transitions us to the West. We have the Lakers. And like I said, I had them winning the championship last year. I said they're going to repeat this year, and I'm sticking to my pick. Their flexibility, their versatility within the roster is key. Adding Andre Drummond just adds to that lineup flexibility. You can go small, you can go big. And believe it or not, this is a blessing in disguise. You don't want AD injured. You don't want LeBron injured. But what does this do? Them being injured forces them to rest because they got the advantage last year. Not that you wanted the pandemic to happen, but they were rested going into the bubble. LeBron, age 35, 36. He was playing every game, one of the lead leaders in minutes. Now he's forced to rest. AD, take your time. We want you healthy for the playoffs. He's resting because he has an injury history. So now you will get a rested LeBron, a rested AD. You add Andre Drummond, who can help Anthony Davis, who likes to play the 4 more. And then you still have a young, flexible roster. Two-way players, a Schroeder, a Caruso, a THT. Montrezl can play defense. LeBron, he picks and chooses when he plays defense. Anthony Davis. They have the most flexible championship quality roster. Do they have the star power of Brooklyn? Toe-to-toe, probably not. Right? Harden, Kyrie, KD. But when you look from the full roster from top down, I'm getting a more experienced, a well-oiled machine chemistry-wise, defensively a much better team. And I just think they have more flexibility and versatility with their lineups. So that's why they're still my favorites to win the championship. And I don't see that barring injury changing. So if I'm the Lakers, Rob Pelinka, you did your thing. You needed Andre Drummond. You got Andre Drummond. Now just focus on health, playing hard. And if I'm the Lakers, I feel good. I feel good. Then it goes to Denver. Denver got better. You got Aaron Gordon. And now if you're a Denver fan, I think you have to be happy because you have Jokic for one. Best passing big man arguably of all time. You want to see the consistency that you saw from the bubble with Jamal Murray, but adding Aaron Gordon is that another layer. I think the term of this podcast is just going to be expectations, because the expectations for him in Orlando were, are you that guy? Can you lead us? Can you score 25 to 30 points? So we really didn't know what the market value was for Aaron Gordon because he never really delivered consistently like an all-star. But in Denver, he's not going to be asked to do that. He's going to be asked to play his role. And so if he can just play his role, run in transition, play defense, catch lobs, get second chance points, he's going to thrive because he has Jokic. He has Jamal, Michael Porter Jr. You have a deep roster. You're just asked to play your role now. Your expectations are much different. And I think he can deliver and even over-deliver given these expectations. So if you're Denver, you just got deeper. If you're Denver, you just got better. Utah. I like what they've done, adding some shooting. I know they've been clicking on all cylinders this regular season, so I'm not overlooking them by any means. But come playoff time, I'm not sold on Utah. I'm just not sold on them. I think I would take Denver over them. I would take the Clippers over them. I would take the Lakers over them. Honestly, maybe even the Suns over them. Doesn't mean that they're not a good team. I just need to see it in the postseason. And I speak to Pierre from House of Highlights about this all the time with Denver. You go to the Western Conference Finals, your expectations are now to try to win. You're no longer at that stage of, oh, they did pretty good. No, you just beat the Clippers, came back from 3-1 Western Conference Finals against the Lakers. Now you have to keep getting better. So there's no more excuses for Denver. Utah, we need to see you start to pick it up now. Like, you need to win. So it's almost like my James Harden regular season type thing. Maybe probably the greatest regular season player ever. But in the postseason, when the officials swallow the whistle, you don't get that same James Harden. So you can have the regular season. I think it's awesome. I'm not taking it away. But talk to me when you do it in the postseason. And that's kind of my feeling on Utah. I've seen them click on all cylinders before. I like Donovan Mitchell and the numbers he puts up. I want to see it in the postseason. Can this translate to wins in the postseason? I don't think it will. Go to Phoenix. I said Chris Paul has that Wi-Fi quality, meaning that he doesn't connect with everybody, but when he does, you have a stronger connection. He'll elevate you like an MJ type of thing. And they've done just that. Him, D-Book, and what he's been able to do from, the Hornets at the time, not the Pelicans, New Orleans Hornets when he was there, to the Clippers, made them better. To the Thunder, who no one had to go into the postseason. They go to the postseason, drive Houston to a 7-game series, and then go to Phoenix, who didn't even make the playoffs, to now in the top 4 seed in the West. He deserves his credit. So the West and the East, to me, are so intriguing. Now, I think it's the Lakers. I think it's Brooklyn. But the East is more entertaining than it's been in a while. And the West is deeper than it's ever been. Because you still have Luka. You have Dallas. Adding J.J. Redick. Adding a shooter. A hyper-aggressive owner, Mark Cuban. A good coach in Rick Carlisle. I think he's the next face of the league. You have Damian Lillard in Portland. And I had this debate with somebody that I think Steph is the second best point guard of all time. Best point guard in the game today. But I think Dame can do more with less. So you're getting C.J. McCollum back. He had to deal with injuries. He could do more with less. He's a reliable leader. Emotionally, physically, delivering in the crunch. Dame deserves his credit. They're a threat in the West. So the West is stacked. So I'm not, by me saying it's Lakers-Nets, not discrediting any of the other contenders. I'm just calling it spade a spade. Don't outthink the room. It's the Lakers. It's the Nets. But my last thing I want to really drive home is the Steph to LA rumors. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's going to happen. I'm not going to act like I have a source or this is what's going to. This is completely speculation. But if I'm Adam Silver, if I'm the NBA, Steph Curry going to the Lakers is tremendous for the league, tremendous for the sport. I know it's going to receive a lot of backlash. How could Steph do that? He's supposed to be loyal to Golden State. This isn't fair. Whether you like it or not, the NBA has always been built off dynasties, and dynasties are good for the league. You go back to the to the old Laker days, Jerry West Wilt. Like Chris Broussard says, know your NBA history. You go back to the Boston days, Kevin McHale, Larry Bird. You go back to the Magic Johnsons and Kareems. You go back to the Bulls. You go to the Bad Boy Pistons. You go to the Golden State Warriors, the Heatles. Dynasties are good for the NBA. And if Steph were to go to LA, the Lakers' biggest brand in basketball, LeBron, Steph, AD, there's going to be a lot of pushback. That's just the way it rolls, just how it was for the Golden State Warriors, but ultimately it's good for the league. So if you're Adam Silver, if you're the NBA, you would root for this. Of course, they're not going to come out and say, hey, we want this to happen. But behind closed doors, Adam Silver knows how good that would be for the league itself to have Steph Curry become a Laker. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it would be tremendous. So if I was Rob Pelinka, I'm the GM of the Lakers, who I think has been doing a great job ever since Magic Johnson stepped away and he kind of had full control of what was going on. I think he doesn't get enough credit he deserves. If I'm Rob Pelinka, I sit down with Steph Curry and I say, Steph, you are in a very rare and unique situation. You are arguably already the second greatest point guard of all time. You have 3 rings, first ever unanimous MVP, greatest shooter of all time. You have an opportunity to give Magic Johnson a run for his money. You have all the money in the world. You have nothing left to prove to the Golden State fan base. If you come to LA, you have an opportunity to give Magic Johnson a run for his money. You've already changed the game. That's something we can't take. We can't take away what you've already done. But let's add to your legacy. Let's make you the greatest point guard of all time. You come into the Lakers, you come to Los Angeles, you have an opportunity to play with LeBron and AD, and you just play the way you play, which automatically already fits with Bron, it already fits with AD, and win you some rings. And then we can have this discussion. Now, if you're Steph Curry, you ask yourself, what's my goal here? At this point in my career, I already won championships, already won MVPs, already changed the game. Are you in it for the money? Do you see this as an opportunity where, okay, wow, I'm already here? Very few people have an opportunity to say, not very few, nobody has really an opportunity to say, I want to be the greatest point guard of all time. I feel like when you have that opportunity, you're in the driver's seat. What do you want to do? Do you want to give Magic a run for his money? Because if you stay in Golden State, most likely you will never do that. If you go to Lakers and you win a couple rings, of course people are going to hate on you. That's just the name of the game. But if you want to win rings and give him a run for your money, you go to the Lakers. Do I think he'll do that? No. Do I think it'd be good for the league? Yes. But time will tell. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in. For my YouTube viewers, thank you for watching. I will continue to have more and more guests coming up very shortly. For my podcast listeners, thank you for tuning in as well. If you ever want to watch it, it is available on YouTube. So thank you guys. Please download, rate, and subscribe to the Max Van Auken podcast, to the YouTube channel. That's VAN space AUKEN. And until next time, peace.